Welcome to the webinar, Creating an Enhanced Patient Experience. This lecture is being presented by Dr. Brian Laskin, and we're going to begin shortly. And with that, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome back Dr. Brian Laskin. Using his 20 years of experience providing dental care to anxious patients, Dr. Laskin's passion is to reduce stress for the dental industry through innovation, education, and standardization. Through his multiple businesses, Upgrade Dental, Digital Nitrous, Opera DDS, and Tooth Apps, and being author of the book, The First Patient Manifesto, Dr. Laskin excels at integrating technology and teamwork into practices. He plays an active role at several progressive dental organizations and serves as counsel to leading dental companies. Through participation at the Dental Standard Institute's groundbreaking work groups, Dr. Laskin is giving patients a voice, as well as creating important guidelines for emerging technologies. And with that, I get to say, take it away, Dr. Laskin.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jessica. I'm going to share my screen here. And I appreciate all of you showing up. At Tooth Apps, we have a tradition to begin in gratitude. I want to thank NDX Laboratories and NDX Education. For those of you that aren't paying attention to NDX, they do have a new platform. It's fantastic. They're really innovating at NDX. Today I'm coming to you from Boston. I'm going to be at the Oral Prevention Summit. I'm on a panel tomorrow, and then I'll be at Yankee all week. So if you're going to the Yankee meeting, let me know. We have a booth for Tooth Apps at Yankee, and I am not warm 70-degree weather like Jessica. But that means, and I also want to thank all of you for showing up. I know that it's, later in the day, middle of the week, and you have other things to do. And so I very much want to appreciate your time and attention here. I don't take that lightly. And I want to, like Jessica said, make sure to ask questions. There'll be plenty of time at the end. So with that, I want to present to you Creating an Enhanced Patient Experience. And really dig into what a patient experience is versus what sort of customer experience is. Customer experience, I think of as customer service is when you're, when you're greeting somebody exactly with the words you say, when you have a patient complaint, how you deal with it. What we're talking today is about how patients experience your practice. Big picture, if you think about it, if you think of your practice brand is really the emotion that people feel when they think of your practice. And so we're going to be digging deep into kind of how to make people feel better, basically, about coming to your practice. So just as Jessica said, I have to give Jessica a new bio, not only because of the items in the bio, but probably, unfortunately, it's been more than 20 years. It's over 25 years now that I've been a dentist. So the bio is a little bit old. But like Jessica said, just for disclosure, I've created a product called Tooth Apps, Upgrade Dental, Dental Standards Institute, Digital Nitrous, and I've written a couple books, The Patient First Manifesto and Dental Disorder. And I have a podcast, just like every other speaker probably in dentistry now, the Patient First podcast. So another little bit about me. So my practice is in Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis, right by Lake Minnetonka. So my practice called Lake Minnetonka Dental. And I grew my practice from 800 square feet to about 8,000 square feet, adding other locations. And I sold them about 5 years ago to, at the time, the fourth largest group of dental practices, where I joined the team as innovation officer. Now, I've been scaling software platforms in dentistry since then for about the last 5 years. And so I've not been in my practice day to day for the last few years. And what's really happened to my practice, which we built a lot on leveraging technology and catering to the patient experience, which we'll talk about today. But since I've left, unfortunately, it's been a little bit on fire. There's been people have strayed from leveraging the newest technology, certainly have not been focused on the patient experience. And so what I'm talking about today, I'd say, are hard-earned lessons that, frankly, when I left my practice, I didn't even realize how important they are. And I can, obviously answer questions about that, but also, make sure to stay till the end because I will give you a gift to help you go deeper on the concepts that we're going to be talking about today. But first, I want to start off very high level with an alien. So this is kind of how I like to frame what the enhanced patient experience in the year 2025 would look like. Realistically, if you're an alien from outer space and you've been surveying all of humankind in the year 2025, or let's bring it down to the United States of America, and you went and you got coffee, you ordered food online through DoorDash, you know hailed a car or the cab or Uber, you've shopped on Amazon, and then you went to a dental practice and you said, hey, alien, you've not had a dental experience before, but what would you assume, given what a dental practice does today, what a dental practice would look like? And unfortunately, that alien would probably be disappointed because we have not kept up with other experiences in dentistry. And that's what we're talking about, an enhanced patient experience. So when I'm talking about a patient experience, I'm not talking about your dental practice compared to other dental practices, because I think that's the wrong benchmark. I'm talking about your dental practice compared to an auto body dealership, a donut shop, a taco stand, a hair salon, all the other places that human beings are going for goods and services this year. Now, because this patient, we tend, I guess as clinicians, we rightfully focus many times exclusively on the clinical delivery of care, which, by the way, we have to, right? NDX Laboratories, phenomenal laboratory group that does great work, and they can teach you all sorts about, working with your lab technician, ask for honest feedback on your preparations and all the great clinical care that we need to do. That's paramount. However, I think I wrote in my first book that patients are viewing dentistry very differently because our patients don't actually look like this when their nose is in their phone. Our patients kind of look like this, right? Their attention spans are shorter, and people have a very different expectations of what dentistry could be. And let's face it, patients can't judge our day-to-day dentistry. They can judge the experience they're having with your office. A little story that's from my first book. I had a patient that we did what are called no prep veneers. So she had been treated for bulimia, and so had worn out the enamel, the vast majority of the lingual and facial and incisal enamel on teeth, basically 7 through 10, really 6 through 11. And so she had an open bite. She'd been treated. She was getting married, and her mother was a hygienist and thought that if you touch a tooth, if you prepare a tooth, they will eventually be lost. Eventually root canals and then lost, which obviously is not my experience, but that was the mom's experience as a hygienist. So I had multiple hours, over 12 hours of consults with the patient, with her mother, where we basically, at the end of it, did non-prep veneers. One of the most complicated cases I've ever done. And at the end, we sat the veneers. The patient was crying because she was so happy. The mother called me because she was crying because she got her daughter back. And, it was this big emotional experience. And the patient left me a 5-star review. So I was all excited to read this 5-star review. And when I clicked on the 5-star review, it was like getting punched in the gut, because the 5-star review said, I love Lake Minnetonka Dental. They have great coffee and they run on time. So my 20 hours about of consults, the crying and the procedure that I'd never done before of like a buccal lingual flange veneer with non-prep, where got great results, were secondary to the coffee and running on time. And that's just the reality of what patients would like as an experience today. So my point is that while it's the utmost importance for us to focus on clinical care, it is also equally important, I believe, if we want to give patients the right experience so that they get the dental care that they need to provide that experience for them. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So today's patients' experiences have changed. Obviously, doing clinical care to the best of your ability is paramount. However, in my opinion, there's three things that patients want. Number one is convenience. Number two is convenience. And number three, you guessed it, is convenience. So if you only remember one thing coming out of today's lecture, I would say that delivering dentistry to be more convenient for patients to consume it is the number one thing to enhance a patient's experience today. Because let's face it, we tend to not make things convenient for patients. So our goals today are going to be to identify strategies to streamline the patient journey, again, focusing on convenience, which would then improve trust with our patients. Efficiently and effectively enhance the patient experience without adding to teams' workload. There should be an apostrophe there. I apologize. Now, teams are overwhelmed today in dentistry. It's probably the number one complaint that dentists have and groups have about dentistry today, is that teams are overwhelmed. And so it's paramount that we make things more efficient and effective for our patient experience while also offloading our team. So that's going to be a heavy focus of today's lecture. And number three, recognize the difference between enhanced patient experience and good customer service, which I touched on already. This poster that we had in my dental practice would always show this. It showed a duck on water, which that's the patient experience. And then underneath the water is the team's experience, right? It's kind of like the Disney backstage, front stage, or however you want to call it. But in reality, patients should have a seamless, streamlined experience. And as much as we can, a streamlined team experience too. But let's face it, teams are overwhelmed. We're going to be running around like crazy. And so to have a great patient experience, we have to make it seem like we're not running as hard as we are. And so all the tools that we're going to be talking about today, I think it's 7 things that I'm going to be talking about to enhance your patient experience, kind of work towards enhancing the patient experience while also doing that work and offloading the team, sort of the underwater, the busyness that everybody in dentistry is working through. Number one, how we handle our appointment requests. And each one of these, I'm going to showcase how it's done somewhere outside of dentistry that our alien friend who came down from planet Earth, or came down from outer space to planet Earth, would observe things in business today versus how we do it in dentistry. So number one, appointment requests. If you request a ride, in fact, I took an Uber to the airport this morning to go from Minneapolis to Boston, and I scheduled it last night before I went to bed. So I scheduled it and didn't have to think about it, and I just knew that Uber was going to be sitting outside my house at 7:30 this morning to pick me up. Now, versus a dental practice, the vast majority today are still relying on a phone, calling the office and making an appointment over the phone. This is the opposite of streamline and what patients would expect today. Most people don't even use their cell phone as a phone anymore, right? So if we compare the two, requesting a ride, like I said, last night before I went to bed, I just scheduled my Uber. So 24/7, 365, you can schedule a ride. But if you're relying on patients to call you, it's only when you're open and somebody at the business office is there to make the appointment for them. Otherwise, they go to voicemail. Just a horrible experience for teams and for patients. Requesting a ride is basically instantaneous. I mean, if it takes longer than 10 minutes to get an Uber, you wonder what's wrong. If it's 1 minute and then the Uber driver cancels and you have to wait for another one, it's almost like you feel like the ride app has failed you. But how long does it take to schedule an appointment when somebody calls your office? Likely over 10 minutes. It's just not a great experience. And by the way, the people who work in the office who are answering these phone calls, you know, I love handling new patient phone calls, walking out patients and greeting patients all at the same time over my lunch break. Said no one ever, right? Nobody, what's great about automating things through technology and AI, and I'm not talking about AI specifically during this lecture, but every single one of these bullet points, there are artificial intelligence components that you can plug into here, but I'm talking higher level than that. But of course, can answer any questions that you have about AI tools too. But automation tools and these technological tools that I'm talking about are essentially free, very, very easy to implement, and make everybody's life easier, because the things that we can automate and really leverage AI and other automation tools to do are things that humans are very bad at. Answering phone calls, figuring out where to schedule somebody, finding appointments, and all the other things that we're going to be talking about. These are laborious, mundane tasks that people just aren't very good at. But when you have automation and AI, we can actually look at the data very carefully and make easier decisions. So each one of these bullet points, I'm going to have a quote from a study. In this case, 67% of people prefer the convenience of online booking over traditional phone methods. Now, check to see how many of your appointments are coming in through the phone. So my number one tip is to switch to digital appointment requests. You can have this through an easy online form. Patients can do it through a mobile app, as you'll see in a little bit. They can do it 24/7, 365. So if they get home from work at, 7 at night and their spouse says, "Hey, did you make a dental appointment yet?" They can just go online and do it quickly. Doesn't require a live response, and stops people from going and saying, "Well, I can't get my appointment here, so I'm just going to go to another practice." So that's number one. Number two is making it easy for new patients to come into your practice. I want to hone in on new patients because the new patient experience, if you think about it, the research shows that the top 15% and the last 15% of any interaction is the most important. And so that first appointment, we all know, is very crucial. And I would argue it's before the first appointment when they contact you and if they can create their intake forms online and be onboarded to your practice from the safety of their home, from the comfort of their home, it makes it a much more seamless experience. So if we're going to look outside of dentistry, the example that I picked was reporting an insurance claim. If you don't have to call anymore, you just go online and you fill out a claim, versus a paper intake form or having PDFs on your website that people have to print out. It's just not a very good experience. Again, reporting a claim through Progressive, you can do 24/7, 365, versus a form in your office that's only available when they come to your office, in which case, not only are they wasting their time, but they're wasting your time as you're waiting for them to fill out their forms. Having it be instantaneous or relatively instantaneous, it's much easier to fill out digital forms than paper forms. For example, if you hit the name, obviously, like every other form, your phone has your name, your address, your email address, your phone number saved in it. So as soon as you click that on the form, it'll ask you to auto-populate, making it much easier to fill out. Also, claims you can report online through an application, texting, versus paper, which is only available in your office. And then if you're using paper forms, you have to scan them and shred them and all the sort of mess and expense that comes with that. And I realize that there's probably a lot of you that have digital intake forms now, but just make sure that you're not using like a PDF on your website that patients have to print out, because many don't even have printers anymore. And some people, it's shocking to me how people still are using paper forms. So if you're, particularly for your intake forms, at least have that new patient experience be seamlessly available digitally. So on average, there's a 75% reduction in abandonment and a 35% reduction in completion time when people are using autofill to fill out their forms. So again, digital forms, they can be on your website easily, on a mobile application, 24/7, 365, available for patients, available on any device. So make sure your forms look good on a mobile phone, a tablet, a desktop computer. They can be built in auto fill to save time, as we talked about. And this greatly reduces data entry for your team. So having it right back into your practice management system just makes it much easier. Your team doesn't even have to think about it. Those forms, once the patient fill them out, are ready for you to review clinically, and that reduces delays. Number three is a big one, digital payments. I think I'm shocked at how many people are still stuffing envelopes and sending them to patients. So if we're going to take an example from outside of dentistry, paying your mortgage, easy through an application, or you can set up your bill pay, versus licking envelopes and having people pay their bill through snail mail. Again, paying your bill online or through a mobile app or through texting 24/7, 365, versus if you send a paper billing, then whenever people have time, which they don't have time, they'll pay their bill. Paying bill as soon as you send it to people, via text message, email, or notification through a mobile app, they're likely to pay it instantaneously versus very, very slowly, if ever, when they get around to paying a paper bill. Also, a lot of people, I don't know when the last time you actually sent a check was, but for me, I actually just last week was signed up for a company that works as a vendor for tooth apps. And they asked me to either do a wire transfer or write a check. And frankly, I had to send it to my business partner because I was like, I don't even want to deal with this. So make it easy for people to pay you, right? Versus printing statements, stuffing envelopes, the stamps, the toner, the labor alone is just a ridiculous cost. And then when you factor in the time that it takes, it really just dramatically decreases what you will actually get paid. So digital billing automates processes such as paper, folding, mailing statements, which traditionally, and this is the big cost, is that it consumes substantial staff time. Automating this allows team members to focus on patient care and other critical tasks. So that's when I'm talking about convenience for patients, you should really be thinking about what's convenient for your team in this day and age when people are overwhelmed. And so doing things like paperless forms for intake and digital payments really frees up your team's time. So just like intake, it makes it easy for people to have to pay easily from your website, through text message, through email, or through a mobile application that your patients have access to whenever they want to pay. And what you'll see, there's studies that show the speed at which patients pay when it's a notification on their phone, and it's shocking how much faster and how much easier it is. So what we tell people to do once they onboard with digital payments is, if you don't see patients maybe Friday afternoons, just take half an hour and go through your AR and send every patient a notification by text or through the mobile application that when they're due to pay, and you can just sit back and watch. It's shocking how quickly people pay when they get a notification on their phone about the bill versus a bill in the mail. Number four, I alluded to it before, but this is one that I'm very passionate about, having a mobile application to directly connect with your patients. This is, as unlike the first three, is missing in dentistry. There's not a lot of availability of an application for patients to leverage. And I think that this is going to be in the next 12 months, one of the biggest increases in adoption in dentistry. Because what are you doing? You're making it extremely convenient for patients. And like I said, I think that's the number one thing. Not just for your patients, for your team. When you can directly connect with your patients through a mobile application, it unlocks a lot of opportunities. Because let's face it, if you order a $3 hamburger from McDonald's or pick the restaurant, or even a small local burger shop near you, they likely have an application. Why is that? Why is that? Versus dentists that don't have an application for their customers or our patients to use. Well, having an application is the best way to increase retention for your business, period. So if you want to retain patients, directly connecting with them through a mobile application is proven to be the best way, which is missing in most practices. By most, I mean 99%. It's been proven that having a mobile application increases the purchases that people make, and that would include for your practice. Also, it is a way to consolidate all the notifications that you're going to be sending to your patients. So they can view their appointments, they can fill out their forms, they can get third-party financing, they can directly message you securely, they can pay their bill. And so instead of thinking about it, the mobile application is just there. I just got a notification from my bank on my phone about payroll. And so I was like, oh, okay, great. And so if that had gone to my email, it would probably be when I get back to Minnesota a week from now that I would actually see that notification. So I'm grateful, and many of you probably with the businesses that you frequent use a mobile application. Just ask yourself why, and why wouldn't you provide that for your own patients? Because offering a mobile app demonstrates a commitment to modern, patient-centered care, which can differentiate your practice from competitors and attract tech-savvy patients. And by the way, tech-savvy patients are probably the ones who are more than likely to say yes to treatment. So, patient application is very easy to offer. It's again available 24/7, 365 for your patients to securely message you, to pay their bill, to see forms, see their appointments, and improve retention and get confirm appointments. Anything you could expect. I like to say how my wife is going through a bunch of medical procedures right now. Every single time they ask her, "Are you using my chart?" Right? And of course, because it makes everything more convenient. This is like my chart for dentistry, which has been missing up until now. So that's number 4, the patient application. Number 5, virtual consultations. I think there was about 2 weeks during COVID where teledentistry was one of the hottest topics that had ever been in dentistry. I was on multiple news venues, 6 webinars a day, and then 2 weeks later, nobody cared about teledentistry. And I think teledentistry is kind of like AI. You either think it's going to take over the world or it's completely worthless. But when in reality, like always, the truth is in between. So let's talk about what we can use virtual consultations for effectively. I like to compare virtual consultations in dentistry to an estimate that you get from a handyman, or let's say, like if you're getting your car fixed. I embarrassingly backed into a hygienist car. This is several years ago in my parking lot. So I was backing up quickly and dented a hygienist car. Well, I actually called the body shop and could take a photo of the picture and send it to the body shop, and they told me how much it was going to cost, right? Versus consultations in dentistry where we typically say, come in and I'll give you an opinion. Like, we don't usually do virtual consultations in dentistry. Again, all the time versus when we're open. Convenience, convenience, convenience. When we're available isn't convenient for patients most of the time. Instant feedback versus maybe an hour to give people the consultations. And I'll go deep into this to show what I mean by an opinion that we can give patients virtually. Because obviously we can't do full diagnosis without radiographs and an exam. Sending photos or video or voice only, or have to see you in person. Now, this is where I get really passionate about virtual consultations, because I've experienced this many times. And I like to talk about a guy, Joe, who was, in his late 50s, and his daughter was getting married. Now, I like to say, when people have large dental needs like this, right, they don't need a dentist or a hygienist to tell them that they have dental needs, right? They have shame, they have fear, and there's probably a reason why they haven't been to the dentist in 20 years. And it's either shame or fear or money or whatever it is. But large cases like this typically are very different than small cases. And by that, I mean, usually when a patient has massive dental needs and then they are seeking care, it's because of a catalytic event. Either they, in Joe's case, his daughter was getting married, or they might be getting a divorce, or they might have inherited some money, or they just got sober, or whatever, the myriad of life activities or life catalysts that can happen that says, Joe says, okay, now's the time for me to take care of my teeth. Well, if you haven't been to your dentist for 25 years and you have shame and fear, the last thing you want to do is to just blindly go into a practice, open up your mouth and have them look, versus allowing people to look at, take photos or video, or even a video, a synchronous chat like this, however you want to do it. But meeting people outside of your dental practice is the way to bring in these large cases who aren't in your practice, that, if you're advertising for things like, all-on-4 implants or all-on-X implants, which I know NDX Laboratory is just, they're masters of that, right? But giving people a safe, easy first step to come into your practice and send you photos or videos. And then, by the way, of course, you can't do full treatment planning, but what you can say is, authentically, you can, for most of us on the call, you can say, Joe, I see people like you all the time. And, I see you have a lot of dental needs. Obviously I can't tell you everything that's going on in your mouth without having you come in and having me take some more records. But what I can tell you is that we see people like you all the time. And when you come in, there won't be any lectures. There's not going to be any shaming. All we'll do is give you your options. And then you tell us what you want to do, if anything. But at least then you'll have the options and you know where to begin. That is how you build the trust with somebody who's has trouble coming back in for the first time. And so that's why I'm passionate about, whether you call it dentistry or teledentistry, whether you call it a virtual consultation, whether you're just having people send photos to you securely, or doing a video conference like this. Frankly, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're giving people a way to reach out to you, and for you to make them assured that that it's going to be a safe, easy first step for them to come into your practice, right? And again, sorry about the typos in the presentation, but this can be easily done through your website or through a patient mobile application. It's available all of the time. Now, obviously, you might not want to be available 24/7 for a video chat like this, but you could be available for them to send you their photos or video, and then you can review it whenever it's convenient for you. And then you can send photos, video, and this is incredibly easy to do, very easy to implement. So you can either do this where you schedule time throughout your day and you're doing virtual consultations, even for things like TMD treatments, you can do virtually. But I would say if you haven't gotten into virtual consults, starting off with just having a form where people can send photos that you can review asynchronously, I think is a great way to go. Number 6, website tools. Now, I talked about a bunch of things that probably could be on your website in 1 through 5, but I really want to highlight the fact that the difference between most websites today and I think what an enhanced patient experience providing for patient convenience looks like now. And I'm going to say the medical websites, because if you go to a medical website or the physician's website, they typically have what I would call a digital front door for their practice versus a dental website, which tends to be more like a business card or a brochure for your office. So again, I'm going to say that again because I think it's important. The differentiation in where I think patient expectation, like that little alien expectation for practices today, your website will be like a digital front door, having the digital tools to engage with your team and your practice versus just like a marketing piece that's telling people about your practice. So again, the difference is a digital front desk, front door versus a digital brochure. Now, this leads to massive efficiencies. When you combine all of these tools through a website, patient mobile application, preferably both, it's going to unlock your team from not being on the phone all the time and being able to take care of the patients in your office. For example, requests, forms, payments, virtual consultations, all done from your website, from your mobile app, or having people call you, right? So not having online appointing, requests, website payments, online intake, emergency triaging forms, virtual consultations, having your website be mobile friendly, before and after the photos of your work, and a virtual tour of your office. I would say all of those are expected now. And what I want to point out now is that keep in mind, everything we've been talking about, like I said, is essentially free or for no more cost than what you're paying now for similar procedures or similar services that don't have this functionality. But it's just focusing on that patient experience versus having it be sort of an information for patients to consume. 7 out of 10 patients under 40 would rather interact with your website or app than call you. So if you're having patients call you, that means you're turning off 70% of your patients under 40. Now, I don't know what the percentage is over 40, but it's going to be another percentage there. So about half the patients would rather interact in every instance with your website or with your app than with you. And that makes a lot of sense to me because when was the last time you actually called a restaurant to make a reservation or called Uber to get a cab, right? We can order anything online from a car to a house to a spouse in like an hour. So why are we expecting patients to do anything differently? Some tips when it comes to website tools. Number one, function, meaning the tools on your website, in my opinion, are much more important than how good your website looks. But we want it to scale so it's mobile friendly because more than half the patients are looking at your website on their phone. But we certainly want to have the tools there for people to interact with easily available. That's the most important thing. Because again, this website now today is not a marketing tool. It's a way to connect with your patients, including those new patients who are they go to your website and they're looking, can I schedule an appointment? Can I ask a question? Or do I just go to the next practice that has that availability? Saves your team tons of time because when that information is coming in, it's being automated, it means that your team doesn't have to touch it. And that can, depending on how many of these tools you add through a mobile app and through your website, it can save tons and tons of time. And a little tip, it also saves patients tons of time too, which is vitally important. I don't know about you, but during the business day, we're always busy while we're seeing patients. Patients are busy too during the day. And so when you're not at the office is probably when a lot of them have time. And so giving them the tools to engage with you outside of your business hours is outside of their business hours too. So that's when they can engage with you more than likely. It doesn't mean you need to be there, but you need to have the tools, I think, to allow patients to reach out to you when it's convenient for them. Now, of course, when you get back in the office, somebody can answer those questions and then maybe they don't catch it till that night, but at least it's a way for them to interact with you. A big tip, because the first bullet here, function is more important than beauty. You don't really need to replace your website or rebuild it, I should say. Most people have spent a lot of time with the text, the images that are on the website, but really just adding the tools. So fixing your existing website by adding the tools that are missing. And lastly, a bonus tip, a big one that I believe strongly in, just particularly when it's talking about convenience for patients. And this one's a little more of a, this one's not as easy to implement, but I would argue it can add a ton of production to your practice and tons of referrals. It's one that I built, it was a big part of how I built my practice. I like to compare Amazon one-day delivery versus waiting 2 weeks to have your crown done. So, here I'm going to juxtapose same-day service and same-day dentistry. Now, a lot of people talk about same-day services in dentistry. For example, if a patient comes in with a broken tooth, you prepare the tooth and do a CAD/CAM crown that day. That's great. It's great if you can do it. If you want to do intraoral scanning and send to a laboratory and have it made, great. Because I feel that same day dentistry is more important than same day service. And let me tell you what I mean. If you have a patient that comes in, that same patient with a broken tooth, and you said to the patient, boy, we have this great procedure in the office where we can do your crown in 1 day. Come back in 2 weeks and I'll prepare your tooth and give you your crown in 1 day. Patient goes, okay. And then they go up to the front desk and schedule their appointment. Or the patient comes in and they have a broken tooth and they say, well, here's the deal. I don't have time to give you your crown today, but what I do have time for is to just do a rough preparation of the tooth, put on a nice temporary, so this tooth is going to be bugging your tongue, and then I'll have you come back in 2 weeks and we'll finish it and take an impression and have the laboratory make a crown, and then you can come back in a week later and we'll seat the final crown. Which one would the patient rather have? I would argue the latter, because you're fixing their problem that day, right? So whenever a patient has a problem, we are trained, or my staff was trained, to say, would you like to get it taken care of today? Because you're actually wanting to help the patient that's in the chair to get something done that day. That's the Amazon one-day delivery of dentistry, right? Now, to do that, it does require easy communication that's secure and seamless through your team. And for that, I would recommend using an intra-office messaging system, kind of like Slack, but secure, where everybody can communicate. Now, you don't need to use a phone, you don't need to use an iPad or an Apple Watch, even though it's available on all of those devices. You can use a desktop computer, but making it so that when the patient has a broken tooth, you send out messages to everybody saying, Joan in operatory 2 has a broken tooth. Can somebody get the room ready for us to prepare the tooth and get her temporized, right? It's not hard to do, but it requires a level of communication that most offices don't have implemented today. So that's another, again, when we're talking about convenience, handling a patient's objection is kind of combining that convenience or enhanced patient experience with customer service, right? Because we're taking care of the patient that day. So to recap, before we answer some questions, looking at the non-dentist businesses versus dental practices, it really comes down to convenience, convenience, and convenience. And so making sure that you can handle appointment requests digitally, easy intake forms, having a mobile application, website, email, text payments, virtual consultations easily available, website tools, and then having same-day dentistry available for patients whenever possible. If they have a complaint, getting them taken care of that day. Now, all of these, if you look at them, I like to say are extremely easy to do, right? They really don't cost any extra money. They are easy to do. So it's really just are you willing to do the incremental effort to make things more convenient for your team and for your patients and address the convenience for both? So with that being said, thank you very much.